A shepherd is out in the hills when the ground splits open. Down in the chasm, he finds a corpse, and on its finger, a plain gold ring. He takes it. Later, fidgeting, he twists the setting toward his palm, and the men beside him start talking as if he's vanished. He has. The ring makes him invisible. Within days, this ordinary shepherd walks unseen into the palace, seduces the queen, murders the king, and takes the throne. Nobody ever suspects him. Now here's the question, aimed straight at you. If you had that ring, if you could take anything, hurt anyone, and never once be caught, would you still choose to be good? Most people, one man argues, would not. And so, one long night in Athens, another man set out to prove them wrong. The man is Socrates, walking home from a festival at the port when a crowd of friends practically kidnaps him into an evening of argument. In the house of a wealthy old merchant, the talk turns to a simple-sounding word: justice. Being just, the old man says, is telling the truth and paying back what you owe. Reasonable. But Socrates picks up the thread and tugs. Suppose a friend lends you a weapon, then loses his mind and comes to your door in a rage, demanding it back. Do you hand it over? Of course not. So justice can't simply be returning what's owed. One tug, and the comfortable answer falls apart in his hands. And Socrates smiles, because the real question is only beginning to open. Then a louder voice cuts in, furious at all this gentle back and forth. His name is Thrasymachus, and he thinks Socrates is playing a child's game. Justice, he says, is a lie invented by the powerful. Justice is simply what is good for the stronger. The rules were written by whoever holds the whip, and calling obedience virtue is just how they keep you tame. The truly happy man, he sneers, is the one ruthless enough to break every rule and get away with it. The just man is a fool who finishes last. It lands like a slap. Because part of you has wondered the same thing. Socrates has been handed the hardest job in philosophy, to answer the cynic who lives inside all of us, and he isn't sure yet that he can. A younger man, Glaucon, isn't satisfied. He wants the cynic's case made as strong as it can possibly be, so Socrates can't wriggle out. So he sets a trap of pure thought. Picture two men, he says. Take the just man and strip him bare. No reward, no reputation. Make the whole world believe he's a monster and let him be punished for crimes he never did. Now take the unjust man and wrap him in a perfect disguise. Honored, trusted, beloved, while he quietly does whatever he likes. Line them up. Which life would you actually choose? Prove it, Glaucon demands. Not that justice pays in prizes and praise. Anyone can see that. Prove that justice is worth having in itself, even naked, even hated. That is the mountain. Everything after this is the climb. Socrates makes a strange move. Justice inside a single soul, he says, is small, hard to read, like tiny letters at a distance. But what if the very same thing were written somewhere larger, where we could read it easily first? A city is a soul made huge. So instead of dissecting one man, let's build an entire society from scratch, in speech, and watch for the moment justice appears in it. Then we'll turn and find that same shape, smaller, inside ourselves. It sounds like a detour. It's really the master key. To understand the health of one person, Socrates is going to design a whole world. And every strange, brilliant, unsettling idea that follows grows out of this single trick of looking bigger to see smaller. So they build. And the city begins not with kings or armies, but with hunger. No one, Socrates notes, is self-sufficient. You can't grow your own grain, weave your own cloth, and build your own house all at once. So people gather. A farmer, a builder, a weaver, each doing the one thing they're best at, trading the rest. A quiet, healthy little city, needs met. No one's straining for more. But people are never content with enough. They want couches, perfumes, pastries, gold, luxury, and a city swollen with wants must reach for its neighbor's land, which means, for the first time, this peaceful society needs something new and dangerous: soldiers, warriors trained to protect it. And the whole question of the republic quietly shifts. Who guards the city? And who guards us from the guards? These protectors, Socrates calls them guardians, are a paradox on two legs. They must be fierce to enemies and gentle to their own people, savage and tender at once. Like a good watchdog, he says, that snarls at strangers and melts for the household. How do you grow a soul like that? You control what shapes it, and nothing shapes the young more than the stories they're told. So Socrates proposes something that still makes readers flinch: censorship. The old poems, full of gods lying, cheating, and murdering, would be cut or rewritten. Show children only what you want them to become. It's one of the most argued over ideas he'll offer: freedom traded for the sake of a soul. But he's chasing something underneath it. What is the invisible glue that holds any city, any person, together? His answer is audacious. To bind the city in loyalty, Socrates says the founders would tell everyone a myth, one single grand lie, which will be believed by everybody. The story goes like this: you were all born from the same earth, brothers and sisters of one soil. But the God who made you mixed different metals into your making: gold in those fit to rule, silver in the soldiers, iron and bronze in the workers. Know your metal, love your place, and guard the city like family. Socrates knows it's a fiction. He proposes it anyway, a useful falsehood to make strangers feel like kin. 24 centuries later, we're still arguing about it. Can a good society be built on a beautiful lie? Hold that discomfort, because Socrates is about to show you the truth he thinks a ruler must actually see. But first, he drops 3 ideas so shocking he calls them waves, each one big enough to drown him in ridicule. Wave 1. Women should be trained and rule as guardians exactly like men, radical in ancient Athens. Wave 2 is stranger still. Among the guardians, there would be no private families at all. No, my house. No, my child. Partners would be matched by the state, offspring raised in common, so that no one knows their own son or daughter, and every child belongs to everyone. The city would even manage who pairs with whom, choosing for the good of the whole, the way a breeder improves a herd. It's cold. It's controversial. Frame it as Plato does, a thought experiment pushed to its limit, and brace yourself, because the third wave is the one the whole book is built to survive. Here it is. The most ridiculous thing Socrates will say, and he almost doesn't dare. There is no end to suffering for our cities, he tells Glaucon, unless philosophers become kings, or the kings we already have become true philosophers. Let that sink in. Not better generals, not richer merchants, thinkers on the throne, the people least hungry for power holding all of it. It sounds like a joke, and Socrates knows exactly how it sounds. Everyone pictures the philosopher as a useless dreamer muttering about clouds, the last person you'd trust with a kingdom. So he has to answer the obvious objection first. What could a philosopher possibly see that a hard-nosed man of action can't? What do these dreamers know that would make them worth crowning? To answer, he leaves the city behind and goes underground. But watch how the world treats such a person, Socrates says, and picture a ship. The crew is brawling over the wheel, each sailor sure he should steer, though none has studied the sea. They drug the honest captain, seize the helm, and drink the stores, calling it a fine voyage. And the one man who actually watches the stars and the winds, the only one who truly knows how to navigate, they mock as a useless stargazer, a waste of deck space. That, he says, is what happens to the wise in a sick society. It isn't that the philosopher is worthless. It's that a ship steered by appetite has no idea what it's missing. The tragedy isn't that no one can see the truth. It's that the people who could, we've taught ourselves to laugh at. So what does the philosopher study that's worth more than the wheel? The highest thing there is what Socrates calls the form of the good. Not any single good thing, but goodness itself, the source that makes truth true and being real, standing, he says, even beyond being. It's almost too much to look at directly, so he hands you an image instead: the sun. You can't stare at the sun, but without it, you'd see nothing at all. It's the light that makes every other thing visible. The good is the sun of the mind. By its light, the philosopher sees what everyone else only gropes at in the dark. And that word, dark, is the door. Because Socrates now asks you to imagine the darkest place a human being could live and never know it. Picture people who have lived since birth chained in an underground cave, heads locked forward, able to see only the wall in front of them. Behind them burns a fire, and between the fire and their backs, unseen hands raise puppets and shapes, throwing shadows onto that wall. Shadows are all these prisoners have ever seen. To them, the shadows aren't images of the world. They are the world, the only real thing there is. Now free one prisoner. Turn him around. The firelight stabs his eyes. Everything blurs and hurts. Drag him up the long tunnel into daylight, and he's blind, overwhelmed, furious. But slowly his eyes adjust. He sees color, depth, other people, the sky, and at last the sun itself. And he understands, with a shock that reorders everything, that his whole life he mistook shadows for reality. Here's the twist that makes the cave unbearable. The freedman could stay in the sunlight forever. Instead, Socrates says he must go back down, into the dark, for the ones still chained. And it goes badly. His eyes, used to the sun now, can't make out the shadows anymore. So the prisoners decide the journey up ruined him. Why would anyone leave? If someone tried to unchain them and lead them up, they'd laugh. And if they could get their hands on him, they'd kill him. Socrates says this lightly, but every reader hears the chill in it. The real Socrates would one day be condemned to death by his own city for asking exactly these questions. The one who sees the light is bound to serve the people who can't, even when they hate him for it. That, he says, is why the wise must rule. Not because they crave power, but because they're the only ones who won't abuse it. Now Socrates keeps his promise and turns the giant city back into a single soul. Look inside yourself, he says, and you'll find three forces, not one. There's reason, the part that calculates, that wants what's truly good. There's spirit, the fire of courage, pride, and anger, the part that bristles at insult. And there's appetite, the vast, hungry crowd of desires for food, money, sex, more. A city has rulers, soldiers, and workers. A soul has exactly the same three. And now, at last, justice steps out of the shadows. Justice in a person is this: each part doing its own job and not seizing another's. Reason guiding, spirit defending, appetite obeying. A soul in right order. Injustice is the opposite. Appetite storming the throne, a civil war inside your own chest. This is Socrates' answer, and he's only begun to press it. Feel what he's just claimed. Injustice was never really about breaking society's rules. It's a sickness in you, a soul at war with itself, dragged four directions at once, never at peace. And now circle back to that ring. The invisible man who does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. We called him free. But look again. He isn't ruling his appetites. They're ruling him. He's a city in permanent riot wearing a crown. The question that started this whole night, would you still be good if no one was watching? Socrates is quietly turning it inside out. The reward for justice was never applause from outside. It was order inside. And to prove it all the way down, he's going to show you what a human being becomes when injustice wins completely. He's going to build the worst man alive. To find the worst man, Socrates first shows how even the best society decays, because nothing human holds its shape forever. He lines up a slow-motion collapse in 5 stages. It starts with his ideal, rule by the genuinely wise and good. But their children inherit power without wisdom, and love of honor creeps in where love of truth used to sit. So the first fall is to a society of proud warriors, hungry for victory and reputation, magnificent, competitive, and just slightly off. You can already feel the logic. Each stage isn't random. It's caused by the flaw the last stage couldn't fix. The city, like the soul, becomes whatever it loves most. And what it loves is about to slide from honor down to something colder and far more familiar to us. Honor curdles into greed, and the warriors become oligarchs, a city ruled by wealth, where you're worth exactly what you own. Now the town splits invisibly into 2, a small rich few, and a swelling, resentful poor, living in the same walls like 2 enemy cities. That tension can't hold. The poor rise, overthrow the rich, and hand power to everyone equally. Democracy. And Socrates paints it almost lovingly. A bright bazaar of total freedom, every lifestyle on display, every desire allowed, no one telling anyone what to do. It sounds honestly like paradise, like home. But hold that feeling of freedom, because here Socrates says something that has unsettled readers for 2,000 years and made plenty of them furious. Unlimited freedom, he warns, doesn't stay free. It's already breeding the thing that will devour it. Here's his most dangerous claim, and it's only fair to say it's one of the most disputed ideas he ever wrote. Plato's argument, not a settled fact. When a democracy makes freedom the only value, he says, it slowly loses the ability to say no to anything. Order feels like oppression. Restraint feels like insult. Into that chaos steps a champion, a man of the people who promises to protect them, to give them everything, to punish their enemies. They lift him up gratefully, and once he's high enough, he never comes down. Freedom's favorite child, Socrates warns, is the tyrant. The people who couldn't bear a single master end up bowing to the cruelest one of all, because they mistook having no limits for being free. Whether he's right is an argument that never ends. But watch what happens to the tyrant himself on the inside. From the outside, the tyrant has won the game. Total power. Every desire fed the instant it appears. He is, in a sense, the man with the invisible ring, worn now forever, able to do anything, answerable to no one. Thrasymachus said this man would be the happiest of all. So look closer. Inside, Socrates says, he's the most enslaved human being alive, ruled by his own hungers, which no amount of power can ever fill. He trusts no one because he's wronged everyone. He's surrounded by flatterers and utterly alone, jumping at shadows, a prisoner in his own palace. The freest man is the most caged. And there it is, the answer to the ring, delivered not as a lecture, but as a portrait. The one who can do anything and never be caught doesn't become a god. He becomes the unhappiest man there is. So Socrates finally answers the challenge Glaucon set that whole long night ago. Strip away the prizes, the reputation, the audience. Judge the two lives by nothing but what they do to the soul that lives them. And the verdict is total. The best and most just character, he says, is the happiest, the one who is king over himself. The most unjust is the unhappiest. Justice was never a bill you pay to society for the right to be left alone. It's the health of your own soul, the difference between a self in harmony and a self at war. That is what the just man has that the tyrant, with all his power, never will. Take the ring, wear it forever. It can buy you the whole world's obedience. It cannot buy you a single hour of peace inside your own head. And Socrates isn't finished because he thinks the stakes are even bigger than one lifetime. Justice, he argues, matters beyond death. For the soul, he says, is immortal. It's not destroyed when the body fails. It goes on, which means the order or chaos you build inside yourself isn't a temporary arrangement for a few short decades. It's the shape of something that outlives you. He'll banish the flattering poets one last time, the ones who paint injustice as glamorous. Because at these stakes, the stories we tell about the good life aren't entertainment. They're the difference between saving a soul and losing it. And to send you home with all of this in your chest, he doesn't end on an argument. He ends on a vision, a story about what a soul sees after it dies. A soldier named is killed in battle. 12 days later, on his own funeral pyre, he wakes and tells what he saw on the other side. Souls, he says, gather after judgment in a great meadow, and then they're led to choose their next life on earth. Lives of every kind are spread on the ground. Kings and beggars, animals and heroes, glory and ruin, all mixed together. And here's the heart of it. A herald cries out, the fault belongs to the one who chooses. God is not to blame. Ere watches the very first soul rush forward and snatch the greatest tyranny it can find, only to discover, too late, the horror folded inside it. It had been good once, Socrates says, but good only by habit, never having learned to see. And so, blindly, it chose its own doom. So the whole night comes back to you, and the ring turns one final time. You will probably never find a ring that makes you invisible, but Socrates has shown you that you're already doing the thing the ring only dramatized. Every day, in 1,000 unwatched choices no one will ever see or reward, you are picking a life, reaching, like heirs' souls, for one shape of self or another. The divided soul or the whole one. The riot or the kingdom. That is the choice, and it's always yours, and it's always now. Socrates' last words are a charge. Practice justice with wisdom, and it will go well with us, here, and on the long journey after. So the question we opened with finally has its answer. Would you still be good if no one was watching? Someone always is. It's you. Keep reading with us, and stay just.